Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
Game's over. Time to check my fantasy scores.
You using a VPN?
Why?
Because using public Wi-Fi without a VPN is like leaving your wallet open on the table.
Oh. Time to up my defense.
McAfee Secure VPN keeps your personal information private and is included in all McAfee plans starting at just $39.99 for your first year. Sign up at McAfee.com/online protection.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Hope you had an amazing weekend. We've got another packed episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. We're talking why Isaiah Sategna coming back to Oklahoma, why that would matter, how Oklahoma should attack the transfer portal the right way, and why real progress in the SEC starts in the trenches. So let's jump into all of this. There's a reflex in college football that's become almost automatic. You know, a player breaks out, the numbers spike, the highlights circulate, and the conversation immediately shifts from what comes next on the field to what comes next financially. Go pro, strike while the iron's hot. Don't risk it. Don't wait. Don't look back. In the age of NIL, the transfer portal and accelerated timelines, patience feels like a gamble, almost impossible. But Isaiah Sategna's situation, it doesn't fit that reflex. And the more you really study his profile, his role at Oklahoma, and the way the NFL actually evaluates wide receivers like him, the clearer this picture becomes. Isaiah Sategna returning to Norman in 2026, it wouldn't just be good for Oklahoma. It would be the smartest football decision he could make. This isn't about, sentimental stuff. It's not about fear. It's not about holding on to college football a little bit longer. It's about leverage, and like so many other things, context matters here. And Sategna's context is rare. Start with what he just did. After transferring from Arkansas, he didn't slowly work his way onto Oklahoma's offense. He didn't flash occasionally. He didn't become a complementary piece. He became the offense. 65 catches, 948 yards, 7 touchdowns, a team best 14.6 yards per reception, over 300 return yards. So that's not just production, that's responsibility. He led the Sooners in receiving yards. He was the most reliable chain mover on the roster. He was trusted on third down. He was trusted in 2-minute situations. And when the offense needed composure, he did it. And he did it in this conference against defensive backfields loaded with future NFL players week after week after week. And those are things that matter, and they matter a lot. But here's where this conversation often goes off the rails. People confuse having an NFL caliber season with being ready for the NFL. And those are not the same thing. The NFL doesn't draft resumes. It drafts projections. And this is one of those uncomfortable truths that fans, we don't always want to hear. Sategna is listed at 5'11", around 180 pounds. He's not a prototype X receiver. He's not winning with his size. He's not running past people with elite straight line speed. His value comes from nuance, route precision, spatial awareness, toughness over the middle, timing, reliability. Yes, NFL teams draft players like that, but they also scrutinize them more than almost any other type. For receivers in Sategna's mold, one strong season, well, that earns attention. But two strong seasons, well, that earns belief. Right now, if he entered the draft, he would almost certainly fall into that day 3 category, or even the priority free agent tier. That's not an insult. That's just reality. Scouts would like him. They'd respect the tape. They'd also ask questions that are fair and unavoidable. They would want to know things like, was this a 1-year spike? How does he handle bracket coverage? Can he separate consistently against NFL nickel corners? Is he scheme dependent? Is the production that he gave in 2025, is that repeatable? And none of those questions are criticisms. They're the cost of doing business for players who win with skill instead of physical dominance. The easiest way to answer all of these questions is simple. Come back. Do it again. Oklahoma in 2026 is the ideal laboratory. If Sategna were buried on a depth chart, yeah, coming back would be risky. If the quarterback situation was unstable, returning would be questionable. If the offense was shifting away from his strengths, returning, again, might cap his ceiling. But none of that applies here. At Oklahoma, Isaiah Sategna isn't fighting for relevance. What he's doing is anchoring a receiver room. He has continuity with the coaching staff. He has trust from the quarterback. He has clearly defined role on this team that maximizes what he does best: working the slot, attacking zones, converting third downs, and punishing defenses that overcommit elsewhere. That kind of stability is rare in modern college football, and it's invaluable for draft development. Another year in the same system allows scouts to isolate him, not the chaos around him. It lets evaluators track improvement instead of adjustment. It gives him a chance to refine the details NFL teams obsess over: route tempo, leverage manipulation, yards after catch efficiency, situational awareness. You don't get that clarity by starting over somewhere else, and you don't get it by jumping into the league too early. So the transfer portal, it's not an upgrade here. I mean, could he technically transfer again? Sure. Yeah, technically he could. But practically, what problem would that solve? He already plays in the SEC. He already commands targets. He already led a major program in receiving. He already earned all SEC recognition. The portal is most powerful when a player needs opportunity or exposure. Sategna already has both of those. A lateral move, it would introduce uncertainty here. New terminology, new quarterback chemistry, new competition, all for marginal upside. And for a player whose NFL future depends on consistency and tape quality, uncertainty is going to be the enemy. So returning to Oklahoma doesn't just limit his ceiling, it stabilizes it. Another year, it's not about volume, it's about proof. This is where the 2026 season becomes pivotal. If Sategna comes back and posts similar numbers, say 70, 85 catches, close to 1,000 yards, again, steady red zone usage, then the narrative, it changes completely. 2 years of SEC production eliminate the flash in the pan label. They establish sustainability. But the most important thing won't be the box score. It'll be how he's used. If Oklahoma continues to funnel critical downs through him, third and medium, 2-minute drill, must-have situations, scouts are going to notice that. Those are the reps that translate. Those are the snaps that earn trust at the next level. And if Sategna continues contributing on special teams, especially as a punt returner, he adds something NFL staffs crave, which is optionality. A receiver who can help on Sunday, even if he's not, number 2 on the depth chart. That's how careers are built. Staying at Oklahoma isn't playing it safe for Isaiah Sategna. It's playing it smart. There's a misconception that returning to school is the, quote, safe choice, but it's not. Coming back means defenses game plan specifically for you. It means that expectations rise. It means that every rep is evaluated through a pro lens. There's nowhere to hide. If Sategna were afraid of that, he'd already be gone. But everything about his career suggests the opposite. He's climbed steadily. He's embraced competition. He's maximized opportunity. So returning to Oklahoma in 2026 wouldn't be a clinging to comfort type thing. It would be pressing the advantage. The bottom line is this: Isaiah Sategna doesn't need to rush his future. He needs to clarify it. Another year at Oklahoma gives him control over his narrative instead of hoping a front office sees what he hasn't fully shown yet. It gives him leverage, not just financially through the NIL, but professionally through certainty. For Oklahoma, his return would mean continuity, leadership, and offensive stability. But for Sategna, it means turning a great season into a profile NFL teams understand, trust, and invest in. That's not wishful thinking. That's just smart football. And sometimes the smartest move isn't the fastest one. It's just the one that lets you arrive undeniable.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
The college transfer portal is literally just days away from opening up. And yeah, we're going to talk about it, that this entire episode is dedicated towards the transfer type talk. And it's going to dominate headlines for probably the first half of January, at least. And I know with us, with Oklahoma fans, there's the temptation every December, and honestly for the university itself, for the program, to treat the transfer portal kind of like a clearance rack. You scroll fast, you grab names, you close, you chase production, and then you win that graphic. Who's available? Who can score for me right now? Who looks good in a commitment, tweet or X? And that instinct worked, or at least survived, in the Big 12. Tempo covered flaws, space hid weaknesses, and you could outscore problems before they fully revealed themselves. But we're learning 2 years in now, the SEC, it doesn't work like that. And if Oklahoma wants to stop chasing the SEC and start shaping it, the transfer portal can go, no longer be about noise. It has to be about architecture, because the portal shouldn't define Oklahoma's identity. What it should do is reinforce it. And right now, the Sooners are standing at one of the most important roster crossroads of the Brent Venables era. This portal cycle, it's not about splash. It's about leverage, timing, and positional honesty. One of the foundational mistakes programs make in the portal era is trying to rebuild themselves every offseason. That's how you end up with rosters that look talented on paper, but become very, very fragile on Saturdays. Florida State. The best SEC programs, they don't live in that churn. Georgia, they don't overhaul. Alabama, they haven't seen them panic buy from the portal. And Ole Miss, while they play in the portal, they don't reinvent themselves every winter. What these programs do is they supplement, they replace experience, they add maturity to young rooms, they fix specific matchup problems, and they don't tear down the house every year and hope it stands up by October. If Oklahoma wants to join that tier, they were so close this year. If they want to join that tier, then discipline has to replace desperation. You look at 4 to 7 impact portal additions per cycle. Not 12, not 15, not that, well, we'll figure it out in the fall, type mentality. Experience should always outweigh upside. Project quote transfers, they only make sense when the ceiling is undeniable. Otherwise, the portal should be about certainty. Players who have survived real snaps against real competition. And that's the lens Oklahoma has to use moving forward. And it starts where it always starts in the SEC. It starts in the trenches. If Oklahoma ever goes through a portal cycle without addressing the offensive or defensive line, that's not roster management. That is malpractice. On offense, the priority is obvious: interior offensive line experience. And actually, stay tuned for the next segment because I got a name I'm going to throw out there for you. SEC defenses, they don't attack the edges first. They collapse the middle. You can scheme around average tackles. You cannot hide weak guards and centers. Pressure right up the gut, it ruins quarterbacks. It ruins timing. It ruins games in November. One veteran interior lineman can stabilize an entire offense. It keeps young players from being rushed into starting roles. It allows quarterbacks to trust the pocket late in games when the noise gets loud and the margin gets thin. Oklahoma doesn't need All-Americans here. They need reliable adults. Players who have started games, players who have held up against power fronts, players who don't panic when the pocket compresses. 1 or 2 of those every cycle, non-negotiable. Defensively, the math is similar. Oklahoma doesn't need 5-star portal defensive linemen every year. What it needs are interior bodies who can survive in November and rotational edge players who can handle snap volume. Depth wins in this conference. Starters set the tone, but rotations decide the outcomes. If you can't rotate without a drop-off, you're really not built for the SEC. And then there's tight end, the quiet accelerator. Oklahoma still hasn't fully unlocked that package yet. I think Oklahoma's one of Oklahoma's biggest SEC deficiencies, it's not speed or skill, it's structural flexibility. And we talked about that a little bit in the last episode. A tight end changes everything. It forces defenses to declare personnel. It changes linebackers, how they fit. It improves run-pass balance. It boosts red zone efficiency. It enhances protection without tipping play calls. And the SEC tight end, it's not a luxury. It is infrastructure. And the portal is the best place to find this. 1 3-down tight end who can stay on the field in all situations impacts games more than another depth piece at wide receiver ever will. But speaking of wide receivers, when it comes to skill positions, this is where Oklahoma has to show restraint. Historically, Oklahoma recruits skill positions well. The portal should not be used to overcrowd those rooms or disrupt the chemistry that's there. At wide receiver, portal additions should only happen if a clear starter leaves. If maybe the player you're bringing in fills a specific high impact role. That's where names like Jace Brown from Kansas State matter. Brown is not just productive, he's a true vertical threat. He replaces lost speed. He stretches coverage immediately. That's a calculated strike, not a luxury buy. Nick Marsh would make sense if you're betting on immediate production upside. Even Malachi Coleman makes sense if you're seeking some size diversity. But the key is fit. Do they fit? Can they fit? Will they fit? And by the way, shameless plug here, pay attention to the website online, heartland-sports.com. Pay attention to our social medias, particularly Facebook. We're going to have a lot to say about these players coming up this week before the portal opens up. So these players, these names we're mentioning, they're not going to be the last time you hear us talk about them. So make sure you stay tuned. But getting a fit, that's the key. That is the key. You look at Jaden Knott. All the talent was there. All the talent was there. All conference, 1,000-yard rusher. But you know what wasn't there? The fit. The fit wasn't there. And I know we're talking about running backs to receivers, but I'm just saying the fit. Because depth Depth receivers via the portal, typically what they do is stall development and create unnecessary competition. And Oklahoma can't afford to clog rooms just to win a recruiting headline. And we talked about Jake Knott. Well, here you go. Running back's the same way. You add experience if protection, short yardage, reliability, or pass catching is missing. You don't add bodies just to add bodies. And where Oklahoma absolutely cannot hesitate in this cycle, I believe the biggest priority on this roster right now, linebacker. It is the clear priority. You got Kobe McKenzie already in the portal. You got Kip Lewis potentially going to the NFL. And Oklahoma is not reloading. The Sooners are rebuilding in the middle of the defense. And Brent Venable's system lives and dies with linebacker play. And you got to find guys with communication, guys, again, that fit, that have leverage, tackling consistency. Everything flows through that or those positions. And you look at names like Keaton Thomas, Austin Romine. They should be high on this board. They're, again, more information coming this week about these guys, but they're Big 12 tested. They're assignment sound. They're physically ready for SEC play. They offer immediate, competence. And competence, is valuable. I mean, you got guys sometimes that just don't know what they're doing. Robert Woodyard, he represents the idea portal type guy you want. He's an SEC linebacker from Auburn who doesn't need an adjustment year. Kamori House brings athletic production. Kevon Sherman offers disruptive upside. So Oklahoma should take 2 or 3 linebackers this cycle, and there's a whole list of names right there. But you got to take linebackers not because it's flashy, but because it's necessary. I think quarterback, it's going to be interesting here because it's a position where I think Oklahoma has to resist portal chaos infecting the rest of, that's infecting the rest of the college football. Everybody's getting in on the quarterbacks. But it should only be used here if John Mateer leaves. I don't think John Mateer is leaving. And again, we've talked about that. But if Oklahoma adds a quarterback, it needs to either be an immediate starter or a clear mentor type backup with real game experience. And right now, there's just not space on the roster for either one of those categories. And anything outside of that, it destabilizes development. Stability is important. It matters more than competition for competition's sake. There's an evaluation principle here that I think Oklahoma should commit to across the board. You want snap proof over box scores. Here's what I'm trying to say. The best portal additions are players who've logged 600, 900 career snaps, players who've stayed on the field in tight games, players who have earned trust through coaching changes. Those are the type of players that raise the floor. And again, you're playing in a conference where raising the floor is how you win ugly games on the road October and November. And, finally, you can't talk about the portal without talking about NIL. And NIL discipline, it's going to be big. This is where Nagy comes in. The best portal teams, they move early. They identify targets before the window opens. They have NIL clarity. They feel the trench needs quickly. Late cycle panic additions almost always fail. And Oklahoma doesn't need to win every bidding war. Resources should flow to positions that decide games. Offensive line, defensive line, linebacker. Also going towards, obviously, retaining core contributors because the portal, it's not just about who you add. It's also about who you keep. And if Oklahoma executes this correctly, a strong portal cycle is going to look like this. I really believe this is what we're looking for. 2 interior offensive linemen. 1 defensive lineman, 2 or 3 linebackers. You got to grab a tight end, and then 1 targeted skill player. And then if something happens, if you lose another defensive back, if John Mateer decides to go to the NFL, then you got to go for a quarterback or a defensive back. But you're not looking for things that are viral. You're not looking for flashy. What you want out of this transfer cycle more than anything else is sustainable. Get things that help you sustain where you are and continue to climb within this conference.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy.
No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
All right, so we can't talk about the transfer portal with vagueness forever. At some point, you got to start name dropping. Well, moving forward, that's what we're going to be doing on our social media platform, on the website, and here on the Sooner Nation podcast. And there are transfer portal additions that win headlines, and then there are the transfer portal additions that win football games. And those two categories, they don't really overlap nearly as often as fans would like to believe. And I think, one more time, going back to what we've already talked about in the first two segments, if Oklahoma is serious about becoming an SEC program in practice, not just in branding, not just in scheduling, not just in marketing, then its portal strategy has to move away from chasing flash and towards solving structural problems. And right now, it's no secret, one of Oklahoma's most pressing structural problems lives in the interior of the offensive line. And that's why a guy like Grant Segrin deserves real attention in Norman. This wouldn't be a move that's about splash. This would be a move that's 100% about fit, about timing, and really about what's necessary. With Febechi Wewu, his eligibility now exhausted, Oklahoma enters the 2026 season with a familiar but dangerous question. Who stabilizes the interior when the competition level rises and the margin for error disappears? Because the Sooners have bodies, okay? They've got bodies. They've got young talent. But what they don't have is certainty. And uncertainty up front, particularly in this conference, it doesn't just lead to inconsistency, it leads to dysfunction. Grant Segrin doesn't solve everything, but he solves the right problem. He represents a different kind of portal profile. And we always talk about things that matter. This matters. He's not a former 5-star guy. He's not a one-year wonder. He's not a social media win. Dude walked on at Nebraska. He redshirted. He waited. He developed. Then he transfers to Oklahoma State. And he earns his way into a starting role during what was an incredibly difficult season, under pressure, in real games, against real competition. That path tells you far more about a lineman than a recruiting ranking ever will. At 6'6", Segrin has the frame coaches want. Yeah, Bill Bedenbaugh would love this dude. But more importantly, he's lived through multiple systems, multiple staffs, and multiple degrees of instability. So adjusting and adapting is not going to be a problem. That experience, it matters, especially for a program that cannot afford offensive line vitality, moving deeper into conference play, trying to take that next step. And that's where Weewu's departure changes a lot of things, because losing an experienced interior lineman doesn't just create a vacancy, it creates exposure. Interior offensive line play is where offenses either survive or they get swallowed up. You can hide a young tackle with chips and with helping. You can scheme around edge pressure. You cannot hide a soft or inexperienced interior lineman. Defensive coordinators know this. They test it relentlessly. They bring pressure up the middle. They collapse pockets. They force quarterbacks off timing and into mistakes. Oklahoma has promising young linemen, but promise is not protection. Asking underclassmen to immediately carry interior responsibilities against the type of fronts you face in this conference, it's not development, it's risk. And risk at guard or center creates cascading consequences: quarterback discomfort, run game inconsistency, third down inefficiency, and obviously red zone failures. That's why Oklahoma's need for an interior lineman, it's not optional, it is foundational. And one of the most underrated aspects of Segrin's profile is his positional flexibility. At Oklahoma State, he started games at right tackle. Now, that alone signals trust. Coaches don't put unprepared players on the edge. But this body type, experience, and development arc, they make him a legitimate candidate to slide inside, particularly at guard, where Oklahoma's need is its most acute. They gotta have guys at guard. This is where portal philosophy becomes real. Oklahoma doesn't need flawless plug-and-play star on the interior of the line. What it needs is a lineman who can compete, immediately adapt, and raise the floor of the room. Segrin checks those boxes because he brings starting experience in Power 4 games, familiarity with multiple offensive systems, a physical profile suited for interior contact, and probably most importantly, he brings maturity. He's not entering the portal demanding guarantees. He's entering it ready to compete. And that matters more than what a lot of us realize. And it aligns directly with what Brent Venables wants Oklahoma to become. Venables has been clear, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, but he's been clear about the identity that he's building in Norman. He wants his team to be tougher, more resilient, less dependent on perfection, and all of that starts up front. Offensive linemen like Segrin, they fit Venables' vision because they don't require hype to function. They earn trust. They stabilize rooms. They allow younger players to develop without being thrown into the fire too early. This is also where Jim Nagy's role as general manager shows up. Oklahoma is not chasing portal stars anymore. It's chasing portfolio balance, experience, insurance, lineup flexibility. And again, Segrin's not a headline move. He's a portfolio move. And in the context of this conference, that amplifies everything. What worked in the Big 12 doesn't automatically translate in this league. And Oklahoma's already learned that lesson the hard way. Interior defenders, they're bigger. They are faster. They are more disciplined. Games are literally won by inches, not spacing. Offensive lines are tested every snap, not just on obvious passing downs. That's why adding a veteran lineman with starting experience matters more than adding another developmental prospect. So Oklahoma, they cannot afford to be young and thin at guard, not with this schedule, not with this league, not with this margin. Segrin gives Oklahoma options. He allows the staff to protect young players rather than to rush them. He gives quarterbacks cleaner pockets. He gives the run game a chance to function without perfect conditions. And that's the quiet value of smart portal additions. The best portal wins, they don't announce themselves loudly. They show up in snap counts and lineup consistency and fewer third and long disasters. If Oklahoma adds Grant Segrin, Sooner Nation, we may not celebrate in January. But I think by October, we're definitely going to feel it, right? We're going to feel it in fewer interior pressures and manageable down and distance situations and an offense that doesn't unravel when protection breaks down. Because that's what veteran linemen bring. That's what they do. They absorb chaos so everyone else can play faster. And that's the bottom line here. Oklahoma doesn't need an experiment on the offensive line. It needs answers. And sure, yeah, I'll be the first to tell you. I'll be the first one to tell you. Grant Segrin, not a guarantee. He is not a guarantee. No portal addition ever is. Go back to our previous segment and the mention of Jaden Knott. But he does represent the kind of calculated, experience-driven move that serious programs make when they understand what it actually takes to win games at a college football playoff level. And Way was, he's gone. And the Sooners have a choice. That you got to replace him. You don't have that choice, but your choice in how you replace him, you can gamble on youth, or you can stabilize the interior with someone who has already proven he can survive pressure. In this level, survival up front, it's not optional. It is everything. So that's it for this episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us here. Oklahoma doesn't need noise. It needs alignment. It needs patience and smart roster building. Hopefully you found some value here. Please like, subscribe, share what we do with other people. We'll be back soon to talk more transfer portal, more names. You can find us every day, heartland-sports.com, on Facebook, on Instagram. We'll see you soon. Enjoy your week, everybody. We're Sooner.
I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you.